So I usually excuse the little bit late, so you can mark your attendance later in case you are late. Try to do your best to attend. Okay, so the Ibrahim, the RB,
Here.
yes, and Babenko.
Here.
I cannot see Chungata or the Christopher, Alexander,
You didn't mark me.
David, Shado, Dominico, hi. So here, the Alias Panta, the Irfan, Sabro, Shreyash Sharma, Staple, Sitram, Young,
You didn't mark the.
he didn't what?
You didn't mark me.
You? Let me.
But in the third one.
Third one, a third.
Yeah. Thank you.
Chen, hi Chen.
Here.
Okay. We got another Chen, the coaching Chen. Dixon. Koparadi. Naren. Shiba. Shankar. Sechar, Saisuma. Svikar Babu. Ashish Garg. Aishi Warya. I'm trying to my best. Sheikh Abdul Labu Sai Hanif
Sir.
the Murugan and Dihik Shit Chakayala Sambanji Kabri
Yes.
Naga
Yes.
and Jam. Okay. I usually call either first name or last name the E from us. Okay, so remind for you. So please decide your project partner. So as soon as possible. Already the 8 teams are coming. So it's a self-register, self-sign in. So if you already find your project member, why don't you sign in to the same group? So it doesn't have to be the sequence, so you can find any available project group. So if you cannot find your project partner by the next week, I'm going to assign the falsely. So then you can start your project. Question?
Oh yeah, today we have to decide the group. I cannot by today, we have to decide the group.
So yeah, anytime. So even you can do it right now. So if you are late, you can check your attendance after class. Okay, so then I usually put what we are going to discuss in this lecture for here. So if you are late, you can check this one. So it's too close. So you can. It's fine. So let's start the first lecture. the last class, I introduced some basic fundamental of the computer and computer architecture. Then as we discussed a lot yesterday, day before, so we have used the memory-based the database. We can say database or data management. So which means in the programming, usually we define the variable, then assign the data and the value, then we are able to access such a data using address of the memory. So that is what we have used so far. But in case we have very large data, so memory is limited. So we are going to use another data structure, which is the database. Okay, and we already used the term name of data and information. Sometimes it's mixed. So we try to clarify what is the data and what is the information right now. So what is the data and what is the information? First, information. What is the information? Yes?
Is it process data?
Processed data. Then the data means unprocessed. Right? So data information is a process. So what about the data then? What do you think? If the information is the processed data, what is the data?
It's something a user has input.
User input, a row, label the data. It's not easy to define the clearly. So think about so when we search the information using Google, we are saying the information, search for information, retriever. But what about the data? Data. So, for example, if I ask you, why don't you collect all the data about the student? So usually you may bring the student ID and their GPA and the address and such a the data you will collect. But if I ask you please give me the information about the student or information about the university, what kind of the information you will bring to me?
Sentence.
Sentence?
So you kind of just say.
So any information. So which means it's slightly different. So it's not very clear to define that this is really data, this is really information, but we need to clarify in this class. This is not general definition from now on that I'm going to introduce, but it's my Professor Lee's definition. So because I need to clarify throughout the semester. Information is like the, for example, the UB has really nice location of the campus and facing to the ocean and so on. Is it data or information? Yeah, everybody says it's information. But I have something about the UB campus is what is the unit of the 10 acre,
Yes.
or the 9 schools. Well, right now it's 3 schools, and the 6,000 population, including undergraduate and graduate. Is it data or information?
Data.
Mostly, we can say the information, but mostly it's the kind of data. So data and information are slightly different. So in my class, I said the information is like everything in our real world. Okay? So in our real world, so even including feeling, and something the useful information like the number or even the something I heard from my friend is information. Okay, for example, the information about this class is really bad of the student, and it's not, the ventilation is not good, and Wi-Fi is not connected. It's information. So I'd like to give the information, this information to the registrar office, then they may change the class or whatever. So data. So if I fill out the data about my class, I have the 34 students. The 14 of them are undergraduate and 20 are the graduate students. So these are the kind of, so we can say just the information, but it's kind of the data. Okay? So what we are going to handle in this class is the data rather than the information, which means data is like the more. You said the information is to process the data. That means even the behind we have something that is you define as the data, right? So that is also data. Think about your object-oriented concept. So what is the object?
Instance for a class.
So when you learn the object-oriented programming, so yes.
Custom data collection of type, you know.
So actually object is our real thing. Okay? So if you define the student object, actually you start from the your object, your object, your own object, object, from the real object thingy. So we try to collect the common information, common data. Then we define what? The class.
Okay.
The student. So it starts from the object. This object is a real thing. It's not related to any the computer science concept. It's not the database. It's not. It's just a real thing. Okay, thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, like that. Then based on that we define this student using class. Class is kind of the frame to design this one for what? For computer, because computer cannot understand this kind of real thing. Then using this class we can create what? Object, instance. It's also object. So sometimes we mix such a concept. Okay. Similarly, when we are saying I don't say that you are wrong. So it's information is processed data. Okay. At that time, data is something, everything in our real life. Okay. But we need to clarify in this class when I'm saying the data or the information. So this information we try to consider information as everything. Okay, it's more vague than comparing to the data. Then, what we want to do is instead of dealing with the information, so we try to use such a data. Data is meaningful information. Meaningful means we cannot say this is really the valuable, this is not valuable. Is that the later? So if you remember our project description, first the phase require you need to define the problem. Okay, what is the problem of the registration, the system? Okay, the student should be able to do this one, this one. This is the problem. So just like that, such a define. So if we are saying the meaningful, so this is not just the valuable or the unvaluable. Instead, it's based on such a requirement. Okay, somebody will use our data and our system. Then, based on their requirement, whether this is meaningful, useful for considering such a requirement. So we are going to say that from now on, data is kind of meaningful information. So from now on, whenever I say the data or database, we are going to use this definition. It's not all the information, but instead we try to collect something meaningful information that is considered called as data. So from now on, we are going to use data. Okay, we deal with manage or something to do with the data. Okay. However, somebody said the information is from the data, processed data. At that time, information is more like the knowledge. So if yesterday I taught the data mining. So in the data mining, the focus on to extract the knowledge or something meaningful information. So it's very hard to say, but such a knowledge is the kind of processed information and processed data. It's a slightly different concept. So information, so it's everything. But so you do not have the seat. You can sit over here, but if you don't want to, you can bring the chair. Okay. I'm going to ask the rest of this whether we can quit the room, because during the exercise lab we need to access the Wi-Fi, but I cannot see any the access point here. So usually one access point allow the 15 to 20 the connections, but I think that we have only one outside. So which means that some of the students cannot connect the internet. So I'm going to ask whether it is possible to switch the room. Anyway, so let's go back to this one. So from now on, our definition of the data is a kind of meaningful information or collected information, because one of the reasons why we are using the database is because we have very large data. So considering the memory size, so long time ago, so actually the relational database that we are going to use in this class was proposed in 1969 and 1970 by Dr. E.F. Code and his colleague. So when he proposed his idea, he said very large, too many the very large data. Okay, so when we have such a very large data, so in memory base, the conventional classical way of the memory, our programming, so we can define integer I or the integer j or string. If we have the sequence of data, it can be the array, like this one, or two-dimensional array. So, but it's limited. So how can we deal with such a very large data? We don't want to keep all the information. Instead, we try to find some kind of meaningful based on the requirement. So then design and massage it. Then for the student, we need ID, name, and address. Even though we have a variety of the information about the student, he's handsome and he's tall and he's always sleeping. I am sorry, but it's a kind of information about the student, right? But I don't want to keep such information, because our meaning, our requirement is the manage student, for advising purpose. So for advising, we need only this one, because it's a very large data. And this is the first task. Can we, from the bunch of information, can we make something meaningful information, which is the data? So this is called the database design. So this is our goal of the first half of the semester. So if I'm teaching only undergraduate, this is a semester-long subject. But as I said, this is a closely listed, and since all the undergraduate students are so smart, so I'm going to little bit speed up, cover this one, maybe the 8 to 9 weeks. So then the last of the semester we will talk about the more advanced topic in the database design. So this is our data. So we have data. Then, so data is comparing to because you already know the object-oriented concept. So it's like the class is the database design. So we design something such a real-world object. Then we create the instance. We create the object. Okay, on the memory. Okay. Similarly, so if we collect such a data from the information, then we have bunch of data. In other words, collection of the data. Not only student data, we have the professor data. We have staff. We have a payroll, or we have the advising. So there are a variety of such a data, collection of the data. At that time, we called such a collection of the data as the database. Mainly in this class, we are going to focus on not just one data, but unlike the designing the couple of classes, instead we are going to design such a collection of data. So this is the main goal of this class. By the way, this database. So what is a database? Database, Professor Lee said, is a collection of data. Then how do we get such a collection of data? We need to design. When we design, when we make something, the outline or framework, so we should have something, the rule or standard. Okay? Like for example, when we build a house, this house should have the number of room, and it has the floor, something like such a standard. So in database design, so we need to use such a something rule or the standard and design. Okay, so which is called the model. So what is a model? So model we use a lot in the software engineering class and object-oriented class and the programming class. So the first homework is the model or something. And what is a model? Template? Yes?
A structure for your database?
Structure of the database. You are so advanced. Eh? So think about the fashion model. What is a fashion model? It's a handsome guy, or the beautiful, or the something, my idol. So fashion model is usually, they are not, usually, so they are very handsome, but it's the kind of the main purpose, objective of the fashion model is to show the clothes, right? Because of that, if you see the comparing the face between the fashion model and the other celebrity, they are not really handsome sometimes. Okay, sometimes you cannot read the facial emotion, because if the fashion model is so pretty, the people would like to see only their face, not the clothes. Instead, it's kind of standard of the human body. Actually, it's not really standard. It's too much exaggerated. But the main purpose is to show up the clothes, design the clothes, then created clothes. So to represent the standard of human body. That's the fashion model. So our modeling in the computer science model is also standard. Standard of what? Standard of data. Okay. So computer, as we have seen in the last class, it's not that smart. It has only 0 or 1 basically. It's a binary architecture. So even though nowadays we have quantum computing, but still most 99.99999 computer architecture, no matter what types of computer you use, the laptop or the cell phone or even remote control, is a binary architecture. Okay? Which means it can represent only 0 or 1. But we can do a lot of things. Even we can send the person to the moon, and we can calculate the variety of things, and even we can watch the movie, and we can use a FaceTime. How? Even though computer is only understand 0 or 1, how? So because it is structured. So computer understand structured data. Okay? So for example, for the instruction level, if you learn to the microprocessor class, so instruction, there is a binary code. The first 3 is used for the operation code, and the next one is AX, BX, or something like that. Okay, you learn in your microprocessor class. I'm not very good at microprocessor. It's a kind of design, structure. Even though 0, 1, 0, 1, bit, and if you are using the 2 byte for the operation code, so it's a total 16-bit, but 16-bit represents all the command. How? Because it's a structure. Okay? So that is the reason I mostly emphasize on the importance of the structure. Any subject in computer science related to this structure. How format? How to organize, how to make the algorithm. So structure, the data. So computer can understand the structured data. So we need to model. Modeling means how we can make such a structured data using something standard. So usually this modeling has, think about this is also modeling, object-oriented modeling. Class has 2 main parts. What? Property, attribute, variable, or data. Variable, data, or attribute. plus
Methods.
method, behavior, operation. So any computer model, any the computer related model, they use the same approach. Actually, object-oriented model comes from the standard of the model. So model, when we talk about such a modeling, so it has also data and operation. So how to organize such a data, okay? Then how to operate. So usually such an operation include 4 basic operation.
Create.
CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. If you already took the data structure class, fetch, insert, update, delete. Update is delete and insert. You learned, right? So such a C in database is called the CRUD, create, insert, and read, fetch, search, and update and delete. It's the same as fetch, insert, update, delete. Okay, these are the very basic operations. So database model. The database modeling also need such a data, defining data variable, and also such a operation. There are a bunch of different ways of modeling to make such a database. So keep in mind, one more time for your remind. So we have a bunch of information, but computer cannot, unlike the human being, Homo sapiens. So we can get the information even right now, or even using the skin and sense, and we can get a bunch of information. Then we process it in our the brain while I'm sleeping or something like that. Then some of them we throw away. Sometimes it's our knowledge about this classroom like that. But computer cannot do such a thing. Instead, we very strictly provide something rule and standard to manage such a, but even though not all the information, something process, meaningful information, data, to organize. Then at the time we need such a modeling, especially database modeling. How many different ways? There are many different ways to organize, to model such a thing. Okay? Somebody may use like I'd like to use such a, you learned about the tree structure in your data structure class, right? So tree is the top to bottom. It has a parent and child relationship, okay? And this is called the root or something like that. So we can organize such a data using such a tree structure hierarchical model, which is called the really hierarchical database model. So hierarchical database model can be used for like the organization tree, or the banking system used a lot before. So this is the bank, and number of branch and department. Each branch has the account, saving account, loan account, and the checking account, and under that there are a number of customers. So when you access the data, you can use it. Very similar as the binary search tree. So you can start from top and access. So very fast. As you know, the complexity of a tree is log. In case of binary, it's based on 2, but anyway, logarithm. So from the n to log n is a huge improvement in terms of. So this is one of the way, okay, to model the database. There are many other ways. Even object-oriented model is one of the way to model the database. But among that, we are not going to use all of this in our class database system. Instead, we are going to use relational database model. So, anyone who never heard about the relational model before? Never. You never heard about? This is a good time to start. So I think the most of it, especially graduate students, heard about in your programming class, you have used the database, the relational database like the SQL Server or the MySQL. Okay, so these are the database we are going to learn. They are based on the relational model. So relational model means relation. What is the meaning of relation? Relation.
how two pieces of something are related.
Related.
Or connected.
Connection. So we'd like to collect the related data. Actually, the relation means in the when Dr. E.F. Gould proposed this modeling, relation is set. Actually, basically behind the definition of a set is the related. Okay. So why is a set? What is a set? Yes.
It's a group of elements that share
Group of
something.
elements. That is the classical definition in your elementary school, right? So that's the correct. So you learn the set theory in your elementary school, like the probably 3rd grade, 4th grade. So set is like this one, A, B, okay? Or something, this is an empty set, like this one. This is a set. So then we learned some very basic, this is in, or something the out. So we have learned set. Then have you ever thought about why we need to learn the set in the math, even the very early? Yes, because it's a little bit weird. So we learn the equation or the something number, but suddenly set appeared. That is one of the problem of the curriculum of mathematics. So because it's not very related, but the people know, the teacher know the set is important, they put the beginning of such a curriculum then. So it's not connected. Yes. Why?
Because almost every field in math can be abstracted to set theory.
So abstract. So very vague, right? So we need to clarify. That's one important reason. And also such a vague. What is a vague in the mathematics? What is the most important characteristic? Yes, go ahead.
No, you said what is vague? Something. Never.
Yeah. So think about when you learn the math in your elementary school. So what is the most weird thing? Or the surprising thing? Numbers is infinity. It's infinite. How can we deal with it? I never use nobody in human the history. Nobody actually checked all the number. Nobody. It's not possible because it's infinity number. Then how can we define the operation for the infinity? Can you guarantee it's really A plus B is B plus A? Then how? It's a kind of a problem, paradox. Okay? If we cannot address such an infinity problem, then at the time we can use set. So we define integer set, real number set. Then we don't have to count all the number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 forever. Instead, the integer is a whole number and it's a set. So we can clearly define what is an integer. So no problem. So set theory, such a help to handle the infinity number. So if you major in the mathematics, so you probably learn the set theory in probably the sophomore or junior level. But it's very important. So it's kind of fundamental. But why in the database we consider the set theory, set approach? So we don't want to mix the integer set. The integer set is positive integer like this one. We don't want to plug in like the 3.5. This is not the integer. All elements are the same, the type of element, yes.
I think we use set because then we can just classify data and extract certain functions to that type of data.
Yes.
So we don't have to deal with different varieties.
In other words, because the main problem of the database is when we have too much, very large data. So it's like the infinity number in the math class. So our memory-based approach, even though we are using object or the object reference or the reference, the concept, but it's still limited the data the storage in the memory. So to deal with such a very large data, we need to standardize modeling. Okay, at that time, how to model, how to standardize, we'd like to adapt the idea of set. Okay, so for example, student set is each student has the name, the ID and address number. And another student, because she's so pretty and I don't care, only name, ID, address. Name, ID, address, standardized. Then we consider group of student data as a set. That is the same as the relation. Actually, that is the eventually table. You heard about the name of a table. So in your classes, I create a table. So if you never heard about table, you can imagine Excel file. Microsoft Excel, it is column and row. Column is ABCD and row is the number. So using the column and the row, we can find the cell and the data. It's a very similar way. So that is a table. So we can standardize using such a group of. This is actually the related. When we define the integer, the set, only integer, they are relative. Okay? But actually relation. When Dr. E.F. proposed the idea, so he can use a set instead to differentiate from the mass. So he tried to use the relation, name of a relation. So that is the reason it's called the relational database model. Then so far, it is being used. Let me. Yes. This is one of the website. Yes. The most popular database management system is Oracle, MySQL, MySQL Server, Postgres. Up to top 4 is all relational database. It's based on the relational database model. And then the fifth one is MongoDB. If you already took the NoSQL database, it's one of the popular NoSQL database. You don't have to worry about what is a NoSQL database yet. So right now, I will introduce throughout the semester. Still, that is the reason. In this class, we still use a relational database model to manage very large data. Okay. However, relational database is not the only solution. Also, it's not the best one. Unfortunately, if you think about the subject in computer science, modeling has been changing along the history, along the time. So think about your program language. All program languages right now, object-oriented model. So in other words, if we apply the same idea, so to make the structure, to make the data, object-oriented model, we consider data as what? Information as what? Object. Okay. So we make in real world, object, one object, another object, then we can define class. Then to manage the data, using this class, we create instance. So in other words, object in memory. Then how are you going to access such a data? Using reference. Reference is, so when you learn the object-oriented concept, if your instructor or the textbook mention about the memory more, I think that's the correct way. Okay, object concept, to understand the object-oriented concept, the most important part is the memory. If you understand the memory access based on the address, you can easily understand what is a private, what is the public, and what is the static, and so on. But without understanding the memory structure, every time you need to memorize. Right? So static is this one, and the public is this, there. So it's a memory. So this is an object-oriented concept. We are going to use such a memory structure, which is defined by the class, then created as an object. Then this object, to protect the data, they use abstraction and encapsulation. And then we realize that the student is not the isolated one. It is from the person, something relationship, super and subclass. It's a very nice concept and idea. So we don't have to really create again, and instead we can use existing class, existing definition, which is called inheritance. So it's very flexible. Unfortunately, database model does not have such a flexibility. It's a very strict. And so if we consider such an object-oriented concept or current modeling technique is the flexible, this is really unflexible. It's really static. No option we need to follow. Why? Because the main problem is how to access the data. So how to access very large data. So that was the first problem. Okay? So when we have very large data, flexibility, it doesn't matter. Okay? So when we have the very large data, so relational database try to solve that problem by collecting, standardized as a group. So we don't have to worry about each and every instance unlike the object. We can consider all group of data as a group. So that is the one thing. I know this is not the easy right now. This is a kind of overview that we are going to cover because some of the students may be curious. Do I need to use a relational database? First, personally, I don't think the relational database is perfect or the best algorithm or best data structure. As you can see still, so if you get a job after graduation, so your company still use the one of these. So which means you better know. So it is true in the academia even, there is no professor who research on relational database right now. Absolutely no. So when first thing, my background is mathematics. So I major in the mathematics. So I know some of the, even including my daughter, don't understand how the mathematics can be my doing or something like that. But anyway, I tried to be a mathematician, but I gave up because my GPA was very low. Then I got a job in the bank IT department. My supervisor picked me up because my major. Because at the time, 1995, it was the period of time when relational database was really popular. So all the company, they try to use from this kind of old-fashioned database and migrate to the relational database. It's really hot, the database at the time. Then, not many people understand the relational database, so my supervisor actually selected me because of my major. So he knew at the time the relational database related to the mathematics. So because of my major, the mathematics, he thought I can understand the concept of such a relational database. But after that, I was a database administrator for 7 years, but realized that I'd like to know more about the database and internal structure and computer science. So because my major was not computer science, so I decided to study abroad. And then first thing I did, I visited all database related professors like me in my old university there. All of them said they are not doing research on the relational database. The reason is that right now still one of the reasons this relational database is still popular is controlled by industry. You can see Oracle, and this one is the Microsoft. Okay, and even though Postgres, the SQL is the open source, but it's still the company. I'm not sure whether Oracle is a produced or not. I need to check. But it's a company lead. Okay. So for example, MongoDB and other NoSQL database actually still research a lot. Even I'm teaching in the classes such as architecture and so on in the classroom. But this one, whenever we have something new technology, like for example, in the network we have the 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 4th generation right now, 5th generation, right? So meaning is what is the 5th generation? It's a standard. All the researcher, academia, industry, they get together, they decide. At that time, usually it's balanced, academia and the industry. But the database area is only industry. So they don't want to be risky to change the model. Changing the model means changing everything. So it's a huge pie. So the Oracle actually share the 40% of the market. So really huge market. So if you go to the IT department, so you cannot find any IT department without database. So which means, so even though we don't like whether one is, so regardless of the preference, still we need to do better study the relational database for your future. I think maybe next decade, still the relational database, because of this reason. I will introduce the limitation or something, the shortcoming of such a relational database later. Then nowadays how we try to address such a thing like the MongoDB and semi-structured or document database and so on. Okay, any questions? So this is an introduction of the database that we are going to cover. But today we need to finish chapter 1 and 2. So I already introduced a lot, so let me read up. So this is so still in the morning, I checked again, this is the last year, the screenshot, but the table is still same. The market share, Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft, the SQL Server, Postgres, and MongoDB, and DB2 is IBM. Microsoft Access is a lot down, so we no longer still use some of the small application use the Microsoft Access, but there is less and less. And these three are the NoSQL database, but the top, the 4, and including DB2, is still relational database. So that is the reason I'm still holding the relational database as the database model in this class. Who knows, maybe 10 years later, well, next year is suddenly changes, so I can use the MongoDB as the primary, the database model. Okay, so we already defined such a definition. So our goal is to design this database throughout the semester. So first half, a little bit more, so 9-10 weeks. So we will learn how to design the database. Okay, and whenever I mention about such a data, this is the kind of the processed information and or something collection of such the meaningful information as a data. So our goal is this is information. It's a real world. Then our goal is to design a database. If you already use a relational database, you skip this part and directly create. That is one of the benefits of using relational database. It's easy. Okay? Intuitively you can create the database and you can store the data. Okay? However, even though we cannot deal with the 1 petabyte size or the 2,000 table, 3,000 table in this class, but as I mentioned the last time, so we try to mimic, pretend the design and creating the database in this class. So I'm going to introduce step by step. Step and step and step, finally we create the database. One more thing. So that is a design. So we are going to design the database. Then, using what? Relational database model. So that is our modeling. That is the outline or framework. Then, using what? Eventually, we need to use what? This. Do you remember? This is what? Computer. We need to use the computer to create the database. So we define database as a collection of data. That collection of data should be in the computer system. So to use the computer research, we need to use what? We need to create the what? Process. Okay? That process is what? Program. running on the memory, which means we need a program or software. So the list of the software, Oracle Informix DB2, CPSC, and the PostgreSQL, and the many, such a many, the names are this database software. So for the software, for the program, for the software that are based on this model is called, first this software is called DBMS, Database Management System. This is the different name of the database programming. But each and every DBMS is based on one of the modeling. This is a relational model, this is a hierarchical model, there's so object-oriented model, the DBMS, and there's a network model, and so on. So among that, we are going to use RDB. So if you heard about the RDB before, so when you have an interview, so the interviewer asks, so how many years have you used RDB? So what is the RDB? So actually, relational database management system. For example, what? Oracle is the name of company that produce the RDBMS, Oracle DBMS, Oracle RDBMS. So if you are saying that I know how to use Oracle DB, that means Oracle software, okay, based on relational database model. There are a bunch of other, at least 2,000, 3,000. Just a minute. So we do not have available seat. Any available chair? Here. Fine. Okay. So Oracle, CPSC, Informix, DB2, and there are many. Okay. Among them, we are going to use it in this class. We are going to use a MySQL database. So MySQL was the open source. So what is the open source? What is open source?
Freely available to everyone.
So for public, which means that they open source code. Okay, so it's not the commercial. Unfortunately, recently the MySQL was purchased by Oracle database. It's a part of, but still it's a free, but you need to agree the license of the Oracle to use the MySQL. But the good news is, no matter what type, what name of the relational database management system you use, they are based on the same standard, same modeling, relational database model. So I never used the MySQL, but I have used the Oracle database. So can I do my project using Oracle database? But if you really know what is the Oracle and the MySQL, so if you have the experience one of them, doesn't matter because they are based on the same standard. Okay? However, slightly different. So usually we are saying 60 and 70% of the functionality of each DBMS are standardized. Same concept and the same architecture and same command even. But they usually add their own feature, functionality, 20-30%. But we do not cover the additional part, only standardized. So it doesn't matter what the DBMS we use. So we are specifically in this class we are going to use the MySQL database. The reason is that this is one of the easy instances you can create using GCP, the cloud computing. So as I introduced the last time, so I'd like to provide more opportunity to my student to use the cloud-based, the computing environment. So I know you have used the SQL Server on your laptop. The problem of using the local database, which is called the local database, is think about the Microsoft, the .NET framework, or the such ASP.NET, and any Microsoft family product. If you are using object-oriented concept, database also consider as what? Object. Okay? So it's abstract. So you don't know much about the behind. You can use ADO. advanced database object, something like that. Then after you set up, no difference between the database and the memory base. Okay, it's like just another object. So that is the reason. So some of the company use such a way, but in general, to understand more about the database system, I'm not going to allow the using local database. Your pain is my gain. I'd like to make my student more painful. I need to get the contract signature from the student. So, even though you have used such a local database, do not find just the easy way. I know if you set up the database later using the GCP, it's really painful. There are a lot of options. It's not connected. Or you need to do it this way. Then you will learn the more thing about such a thing. Okay. So I will introduce more about the GCP with the GA later. So this is what we are going to do throughout the semester, step by step. From such information, then we try to eventually create design the database and create the database using RDBMS. Specifically, in this class, we are using relational database model, which means we need to learn what is a relational model. And also, DBMS. For the DBMS, we are going to use a MySQL database. But the good news, the relational database management system, you based on the same relational model. So I'm going to introduce just common, the standardized, the functionality of the using the MySQL in this class. So then pretty much you will get such a the experience. Then problem is this one, step by step, how to create the database from here to there. So that's what we are going to do from the next week. Okay. So now we can understand what is the DBMS. DBMS is the software. Okay. So I know how to use the DB. That means usually it's a DBMS software, database software. Okay. Then database system is usually call this kind of thing as a database server, right? Server. So what is a server? A person who serves. So server means this is a server. Service, provide a service. What kind of service? Data. Okay? So go back to the very first thing that we discussed. Memory-based, we can directly access the data from the memory using address. However, since we have very large data, it's not practical. So instead, we are going to use another data structure, which is called database. So these databases provide the service for what? Data. Okay? Which means for whom? For whom? Your program. I'm using a speedrun program. Then access the data to the database system. I have a web application. Yes. I have something BI solution, business intelligence solution. Access the database. So we need to use such an application program to access the data, okay, using database. So at that time is the including application program and interface with the database. This is called the database system. So most of company, IT company, when you get a job, so then such a company has such a database system. So in this class, in your project, eventually we try to build such a, what is the topic? Registration database system, which means this part, you need to, in the last page, you need to implement a database application. Okay? Problem? I do not know much about the program, so I'm not going to teach. I cannot. So That is the reason this course requires some the prerequisite of CS11 and 102, or a combination of 11, 102, which means at least the programming part you'd better know. So because I'm going to teach this one, database theory, database programming. If we never heard about the SQL, just forget about it. Don't worry. It's a kind of database language. Yeah. However, I'm going to teach, but I'm not going to teach programming itself. So if you think that you are lack of experience on programming, this is also a good time. Okay? Or you can find your partner who knows the programming. Then you can study hard for this one. Okay? It will be a problem if both of you do not know anything about this and study hard. Okay? But I'm not going to ask a really fancy, nice, professional level of the programming. If you can do it, it's much better. But the more important thing is design and theory, and at least you should be able to. But you fantastic work this one. But if you do not implement this, no way to show. Because this part is called back end. So there are 3 layers of the programming. One is the interface, and second, business, mainly logic, or the GPA, or the registration, and so on. Another one is the back end. So 3 layers of the program. So back end, this is the most important part in this class. The database. It's a server. And this logic registration. You are much better than me because I never registered the course last 15 years, but you every year. So you know what is the problem, so you can design and implement. And for this one, so we can use the SQL database language I'm going to teach. So this part, you should be able to do that. Okay? You can use any programming language, but all this computing environment, I try to use cloud for your new experience. So it will be painful, but it will be beneficial for you. So this part, if you think that you are lack of this part, so please. And also, why don't you try the new language, like the Python? So it's not the only language learning on the cloud, but the easy cloud service provides some the limited number of program languages. So GCP support C, C++, the Python, Java, and the Go. Go is the Google language, and some others. But Python is maybe the good experience for you guys with some application server, web server, so on. So this is the database system. Our goal is if you can build the database system, then pretty much this semester will be done. One more thing is this database system, DBMS system, is not just the modeling itself. There are a lot of the functions. Like for example, backup. Have you ever back up your laptop? You did? I didn't. So just before I left for China, December 20, really 1 day before I left, my laptop was suddenly gone. So I tried my best. I couldn't. So there is not this one. I am using another. The laptop is a Surface Pro 3. Maybe some of you guys saw my old laptop. Then it's suddenly go because I never back up. So that was the backup actually of this one. So I have all history of teaching over there. So it was really painful. So to restore. But database provides such a, for example, function, backup and recovery, in case your database is corrupted or something failure. And also, this service is how many? Many users. Like so it's a transaction control. And also, when I don't think that right now we have time. So 10 minutes only. So one of the reason why we are using database is, why we use the database? Why?
It can manage the data.
Manage the data. And anything else?
Well, because we have so much, we have to create some sort of structure and organization. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's going to be chaotic.
To make it easy to bunch of different data structure and the collection of data. Safe and the backup and recovery. I believe if you need to select one of the database from the bunch of the candidate or the option, the first thing is fast. So because the main reason of using database is when we have the very large data, even we can use the memory. We can swap in and swap out. So that's one of the operation to use limited size of memory. So if this room is not big enough to keep all the student, then switch from time to time. So 10 minute lecture and switch. 10 minutes, but takes longer time, right? To finish 1 hour lecture, it will be 2 hours, 3 hours. Okay? So one of the main problem of such a very large data is slow to access the data. The main reason of using computer is because computer is fast. Fast processing, what kind of processing? Search. Okay? Search and fetch or the read. So that is the first reason. So this DBMS, all the DBMS support does something special functionality to speed up, really. So we can use the memory management and also query optimization, query processing. So after we design the database system and create the database system, we will discuss about such an advanced database topic. So it's more like the internal, inside of the DBMS. Not easy concept, but it's the later. If once you understand the, for example, query optimizer, then you may realize that why my query is slow, and how can we make the fast? It's a kind of SQL tuning. So if you are able to the tuning of such a query, it's really you can do the freelance stuff and consulting the database and the tune, optimize such a query. That doesn't mean that I can teach you such all the thing, only fundamental part of such a database functionality. That is the reason why we use the database. So I don't have to mention about the list of the sector that use the database. All the industry, all the research, we are using such a database system. Among them, the relational database, the management system is the top market share, big part. So this is what I introduced here. So even the application part, even though I'm not going to teach very details of this, you probably learn in your programming class. If you believe that you do not have enough experience, please start to learn and decide. So these are the DBMS functionality. I'm not going to explain each and everything, but right now, throughout the semester, I'm going to introduce this one. But basically, this one is doing the same thing as the basic operation. Insert, update, delete, and read, search the data. Usually we call the database as a query. So in the beginning of this class, I mentioned about the information and data. When we search the data in the information, it's a search or retrieval. Okay. On the other hand, when we access the data from the database, it's called a query. Database query, not database search. We usually say database query. Their mechanisms are different. Basically, they're using structured query language. The search is a variety, different way. For example, Google search used different algorithm. Okay? Random walk, not random walk. I suddenly forgot the name of the algorithm. But anyway, So different. So it's called information retrieval, information search. On the other hand, database, we usually say database query. So we will learn how to query such a data in the database. Okay. This is our goal. Where is it? To create such a database. So at this time, this is a table, this is a relation, this is the definition, which is called the schema. Schema is kind of description of each database, each table. So our goal of the design is to define such a description, the schema. Then create the instance, create the data, insert. So this is called the database state. If you can make one database state, then that's done. So we are ready to search for the application. So this is one simple database. That's kind of your target in your project. There are several characteristics of the database approach I will introduce in the next class, in the next week. For each, it's also important to comparing to the non-database approach. Okay? The next class. And also, last thing. So I talked about a lot this week. I mentioned a lot of things, the importance or some strengths of the database. So database is always the good solution in the computer system and infrastructure. How many of you are using relational database in your laptop? Nobody. You are using? So for what? Some application. That's not your personal purpose. For example, to manage the contact, the phone number and everything, I'm still using Notepad. Really? So that is a convenient way. So I can just use Control F and search and quickly. Because not always database is the best solution. Think about the individual, the personal purpose.
Sure.
Nobody use. Because, yes.
Because I mean, we develop databases to be able to integrate it with programming.
And also,
Programs always use data,
Yeah.
so it's the best way to have programs access
Yes.
it. But everyday life is different.
so for example, if I have the millions of the contact number and information, I should use the database. But I have a couple of hundred, okay? That's pretty much enough based on the Notepad, okay? So database is, go back to the very beginning, when we have very large data. So if you have the small amount of data, you don't have to. It's very expensive. For example, Oracle is easily, they actually cost based on the capacity specification of the computer. So if you have the 10 CPU and several gig, the 1 terabyte of memory, it's easily the 300,000 or it's easily million price. Then also every year you need to pay 20-30% of the MSRP. It's a maintenance fee, even though you don't do anything. So it's huge. It's very expensive. So then, do I have to? No, you don't have to. You can just use your Notepad and you can create the program. Open file and search and close file. That is much better and easy to maintain and faster. So not always is the best solution for the database. Depending on, especially the most reason not to use the database is when data size is small. You don't have to. Okay, it's not necessary. And also cost, money. Okay, because the database need someone. It's not automated system. Someone should manage. So like the administrator. Even if you change the something requirement like the student, we need to add a GPA. You need to do something. Somebody should be responsible for that. So operator and backup. So it's really cost. So you need to consider such a cost. Even though it's really important, security is not perfect using database. Really. So I will introduce such the security problem of the database later. So security. So somebody believes that DBMS is really secure. It's not always. So at that time, we don't have to use the database. Instead, we can use just the programming and memory base, who are the file, to keep the permanently such a data. Okay. So next class, so we will start the main topic of the database, which means this one, step by step. Okay. Before that, please find the project partner and the register, sign in to the Canvas. If you attend today the first time, why don't you go to the Canvas? There is the people and the project group. You can sign. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, and see you next week.